Never really felt comfortable in my own body, always very conscious about what I wore. I wasn't comfortable being in pictures. In 2018, I was turning 40. And so I had this big idea that really need to get that weight off, go through some quick fads. I was having trouble going up and down stairs. My knees, I felt like a 90-year-old woman at time. My body was just telling me, like, you really need to do something. It had to be in every aspect of physical, the mental, reading through R&T. It hit every aspect of my life.
All of the photos he studies, those after photos are just kind of mind-blowing. Knew when I started, it was kind of like in the back of my mind, like that would be really going out of my comfort zone. Never really even thought that I would be out in workout clothes or sports bra, take pictures. And I think it was in February timeframe when I was talking to Ivan about my checkpoint date. And he said, would you be willing to lock it in with a photo shoot? And I thought, you know what, why not? I definitely achieved more than what I thought I would have when I started in January 2022. When I saw the pictures, I couldn't believe that was me. Almost didn't recognize the person through the lens.
Okay, so Kalyani, take me back to the end of 2021. What were the series of moments that led to your trigger moment to think, right, I need to make a change now?
Yeah. So definitely my big trigger moment was in 2021, but I'd say, I think similar to other stories, I've kind of have struggled with my weight and just kind of feeling this just uncomfortable in myself for a number of years. I mean, I can go back to even when I was 11 and 12, hearing comments about my weight or just that I was a little bit big boned. I've always been taller than average. And I think through various moments through 11, 12 years old, coming through high school, even into college, I don't think I was ever considered myself overweight, but just never really felt comfortable in my own body. I was always very conscious about what I wore. And then going through college, having kids, I certainly gained that weight, kind of went back and forth. And in 2018, I was turning 40. And so I had this big idea that I really need to get that weight off and I'm going to go through some quick fads. So I joined a medical weight loss program, and it was truly that. It was a quick fix. I dropped 30 pounds within a matter of 3 months, very restrictive, one of those 800 calories a day diet for a month, take a month off, and then another month. So I dropped that 30 pounds in 2018, felt great, but didn't really have a plan after. And then a year later, the pandemic hit. We were all home and experimenting with a lot of food. We all love to eat and cook. So I was trying to fry up every single thing and anything I could. And really, I ended up gaining all the weight that I'd lost in 2018, plus some, and kind of fast forwarding to 2021. The beginning of 2021, I was already thinking, I really need to get healthier. I need to change how I'm doing things. I actually came across R&T in June of 2021, and I just kind of watched it, just kind of would look at the website, took, I think, the transformation quiz, and you guys told me I wasn't ready to transform yet. I think just based on my mindset at that time, I think I was definitely still in that quick fix mode. So just kind of kept watching that space. And then kind of coming to about November of 2021, we were at my in-laws' house for Thanksgiving. It was all the family was together, and we were all just kind of hanging out on a bed, and I was laying down, and one of our aunts came and laid on top of me, and she said, "Oh, this is a nice pillow." And I didn't think anything of it right then, but leaving from that, I was like, gosh, that was kind of like a little bit of a backhanded slap. And it just really just took me, I think, outside of myself. And I thought, you know what, I've been thinking about this for long enough. I just really need to do something, not just for the way I look, but just the way I felt. I just didn't feel good. I was tired of feeling tired all the time. And I think the following week, I took the quiz again, and I put in, I think you all were looking for the January cohort at that time. It still took me, I think, a few weeks to really get bought in. I think I was going back and forth with you, just kind of, am I really ready? Because I knew it was going to be a big commitment. I'd seen some of the transformations, and I just wanted to make sure that this was going to be the final time. And I really wanted it to be the final time and doing it the right way.
Well, interestingly, I think I messaged you just before your shoot saying I hope it goes really well. And I don't think we'd actually spoken on that thread since 2021. And I looked back and I was like, I couldn't see it on my desktop. So I had to go on my phone to see. It said go to previous messages. And the last one was like, I think you must have been one of the final people in that January 20. And it was literally, and I wrote, are you in or out? And you were like, I'm in.
Yeah, I think I kept getting the 3 spots left, 2 spots left. I think I was like one of the last few.
Yeah, you got to be. And I was like, imagine if that didn't happen. It's crazy. 18 months later, we're having a discussion.
It is. And I do think back and think, what would have happened if I joined in October, or what would have happened if I had done it sooner. I tell my family and friends, I really do wish I had done it sooner, but I just don't think from a mindset perspective, I was there. And I think that's where some of the things you guys do with the transformation quiz, it is important. And it is important to be honest, because I know when I took it in June, I think one of the questions was, are you looking for a quick fix? And I said, yes, because I wanted to get that weight off quickly. And I do think if I had joined then, perhaps it just wouldn't have matched entirely. I just wasn't ready.
I think that's a really honest thing to admit, because you do need to be in the right frame of mind to do something as all-encompassing as the RNT journey. Describe your mentality, mental state, mindset in those months of, let's say, mid-2021 towards the moment where you thought, right, I'm ready.
Yeah, I think some of it was I was just almost going through the motion. I'd get up and kind of get the kids ready, do my things as a mom. And I think towards mid-2021, I did start working out. My sister-in-law actually had moved in with us, and she was working out with a trainer who was coming to the house. So she's like, you have no excuse. And I was at the point where I would prep myself to work out, where I would be thinking about it from the morning, like, okay, you're going to work out today, you're going to work out. And so that was kind of one step towards maybe thinking, okay, I really do need to change something. And so we'd have the trainer come over a couple of times a week, but I didn't change anything else. I didn't change my nutrition, didn't change, I was drinking and going to bed late, and just really across the board. I think just my habits weren't great. I was working out twice a week, but that was it. So I didn't really see any changes in my body composition. And if anything, I think I went through the mentality of, well, I'm now training a couple of times a week, so I can enjoy that extra glass of wine on the weekend, or I can have that, dessert because I worked out a couple of times this week. So for a few months, I think I may have backtracked when I started working out, but it did set me up for at least a couple of times a week. I had a trainer and I had no excuse. And I eventually got to a point where I started enjoying moving a little bit more. But I just still wasn't ready in my mind to have a full overhaul. During that time as well, I did notice with that extra activity and with the weight that I'd gained since 2018, so quickly that my knees were starting to hurt. So, I was having trouble like going up and down stairs or even using the restroom. Just my knees, I felt like a 90-year-old woman at times with just that knee pain. They were swollen, just wasn't getting around. So I think as I went into the end of 2021, it was not only did I not feel good, just inside, my body was just telling me like, you really need to do something. And so I think coming into it, it was almost like I just knew I had to do something drastic, and it had to be in every aspect of kind of that physical, the mental, and just looking through and reading through RNT. It hit every aspect of my life, and just knew I just needed to change things. And I think it was coming into it. And I think with that comment that aunt made, I really should call her and thank her, really, because I'm sure she didn't even think anything of it, but it was kind of that straw that broke the camel's back, I think, in that sense.
And if you can recall how you felt when you looked at yourself in the mirror, do you remember what that feeling was like?
I think about this a lot, because when I even now look at my pictures from my early my progress photos, I sometimes don't recognize that person. I don't think when I would think back at it, I wasn't unhappy. Like I was fine. Things were fine. I was social. But I just don't think I was in a lot of pictures, or I wouldn't really spend a lot of time in front of the mirror. And I think maybe it was subconsciously, I knew what the mirror would tell me, or I knew that being in photos and looking at those pictures, that I would see myself as that kind of the larger person that I had become. And again, it's not all about the looks, but I think it was just, I stopped really paying attention to that image in the mirror or just taking pictures. And I mean, I was looking back at my kind of pre-RNT days to find pictures, and I had to really dig in my phone, because I think I only found a handful of pictures that I was in that I just didn't enjoy taking pictures. And I don't think I even thought about it until after, when I was looking for these. It wasn't even a conscious thing that I wasn't comfortable being in pictures, didn't want to admit it. But I think in terms of, I would change the way I dressed. I think I started buying larger clothes. And I think there was a previous podcast I was listening to that really struck, where she was saying, the person was saying they'd wear black. They'd buy a lot of things that were black. And so it just kind of felt like I was hiding it more. So so I think I would just kind of try to hide it as much as I could. And but I don't think I ever remember looking at myself thinking, gosh, I hate you, or I hated myself. It wasn't to that point. It was just, I think it had gotten to a point where I just knew this wasn't what I wanted for myself moving forward.
Did it impact you as a mother, and how you are with your kids?
Yeah, I think that was definitely something, again, as I was going through it, I don't think I consciously thought about it, but looking back, I found myself very short-tempered, especially kind of, certainly during that 2020 timeframe, we all spent a lot of time together. We were in each other's faces all the time, and it was great for a good portion of it. But I think towards the end of it, it certainly was a lot of that face-to-face time. But even coming into really 2021, I think I was just tired, like I said, all the time. I was just very short-tempered, and I'd find myself kind of being a little snippy with the kids, even if they weren't really doing anything. And my kids are a little bit older. They're 15 and 11. So at that point, they were still 13 and 9. So not super young, but I didn't have energy to really, if they were like, Mom, can you take me here? I was just kind of like, yeah, maybe later, or, maybe we'll do that another time. So I didn't find myself having really the energy to be doing things, especially active things. If they were like, hey, can you come outside and watch me practice soccer? It was always, is the weather right? Am I going to be sweaty? Am I going to be able to move around? Or I'd go outside and I would just sit there. So I think in terms of just my demeanor, I think I was tired and just kind of very on edge, short-tempered. Certainly some of that is still dependent on the situation. I won't say that I'm not short-tempered now, but I'd say I probably do have more patience now than I did a year and a half ago. So.
And when you started and you decided in your mind this was it, what was like your foundational why? Like, what was this is what I want to accomplish?
So I will say that based on what I wrote, I think initially it was very focused on how I felt in terms of whether it was, I want to be able to put clothes on without having to think twice about how I looked in the mirror, which seems very superficial. But I think it had taken up a lot of headspace in terms of, putting something on and just being able to walk out the door without, feeling like I needed to hide something. The second thing was definitely just being able to be a little bit more active with the kids. Not that I was playing soccer with them, but just being able to be outside and just kick a ball around or just show them that I am active. So that was kind of where it started. But I think quickly within the first few months, as I started to feel better, I think it kind of went deeper than that. I just wanted to get my knees feeling better. Like I was at a point where, as I've mentioned, I couldn't walk up and down stairs without feeling like, oh, wow, I need to ice my knees at times. So I think it was a shift in definitely I still want to be able to not worry about what I wear, but it was definitely more of health focused where, my knees were a big issue. My family, I have a long history of diabetes in my family. And it was just, I'm not diabetic, I'm not pre-diabetic, but it's just a matter of kind of when. I know those genetics are going to catch up with me. So I think it started shifting from the way I look to now paying attention to my labs and seeing how that's changing, how my body was feeling, how my knees felt like within, I think, the first 6 months of me kind of dropping some of that weight, kind of increasing my walking, increasing that exercise, my knees felt amazing. Like I was actually able to go for a run, a short run, but still go for a run or just kind of put a little bit more strain on it. So I think my why definitely has shifted and it continues to morph a little bit. But it is just kind of, I think, started off certainly, whether it's vanity or whether it's kind of that immediate surface level why of just wanting to kind of clear some headspace of just knowing that I don't have to worry about what I wear.
Yeah, I think that's a valid enough why, because whilst it may sound surface level, it's obviously tip of the iceberg of everything that's below it.
Yeah. And it's, I don't think I realize how much space I actually cleared after now. I mean, I don't even think twice about putting on a t-shirt and shorts and worrying about anything. It is, again, surface level, but it does feel nice.
I think it's hard to have peace of mind without peace of body. I think when you have peace of body, it just frees up so much mental bandwidth and headspace that often we don't even realize we were taking up.
Yeah.
So
gone. I was saying, I don't think I really paid attention to just even food. When I think back to, I don't know, maybe pre-college, I ate at home most of the time, whatever my parents made, typical kind of the Indian food. But I don't think food was a big part of my day-to-day. I kind of ate what was given, but I think through college, that shifts a little bit and we do become food focused, or I became food focused, and that started changing. And then it was everything I ate had to be like the most delicious thing that I could have. And if I didn't find it, I was looking for that next delicious thing. So I think kind of going through this process has really given me a chance to kind of reset that entire aspect of food. And it's changed where I, certainly still enjoy my fried foods once in a while, but it's not, I need to go fry everything that I can possibly think of either.
Yeah. So you made the decision to change your lifestyle and you went all in January 2022. Describe the initial process and challenges you faced in making this overhaul in so many different aspects of your life.
Yeah, so I'm definitely a checklist kind of person. So that was actually one thing that one of the things that really intrigued me. Even with R&T, kind of, I think you say you give the blueprint and it's up to us to follow it through. So it's having that checklist, I think was great. I think before I started, I went through and read the onboarding material, like almost memorized it because I was just like, okay, this is it. I'm going to do it. I know it's a big change. The first 3 weeks were long because it changed kind of how I even dealt with food. I mean, it's initially I had 1,900 calories of food, which is a lot of food, especially when it's whole food. I mean, I think this is a problem or a common thing that you hear from new folks starting off. It's a lot of food. And when you realize what 1,900 calories of yogurt, broccoli, tofu, potatoes is, it's a lot more than what I was eating based on chips or pasta or whatever I was eating before. But I think my initial process was, I think first I was just focused on making sure I'm following the CTP, just kind of as it was set the first few weeks. I wasn't fully bought into the meal prep idea and just kind of the batch cooking. I think in my head, it was still, I wanted fresh meals every day. I kind of wanted that idea of like having a hot meal. I worked from home, so I had a little bit of flexibility in terms of like being able to spare a few minutes during the day to make my meals. But I quickly found out that that doesn't work, because one day, one kind of unplanned meeting just completely threw my schedule off, where I was either, one extreme wasn't eating my meal because I didn't want to go off plan, or the other extreme, I kind of would reach for whatever was, left over because it was just kind of quickly available. So it took me, I'd say, several weeks to kind of be bought into that idea of meal prepping and batch cooking. And I know that's something that's, it completely changes, I think, the whole ball game once you kind of get into it. So initially, I think that took some time because I was making meals for my family, and then I'd make my meal. And then I realized even dinner time, by the time I got everyone else's stuff done, it was my turn to cook my meal. I wasn't as eager or enthusiastic, but I still did it. And I think as the first couple of weeks went, I dropped several pounds within the first 2 weeks. And I think that was pretty easy. I had a lot of weight to lose. And then we had a trip for my husband that was scheduled for, I think, the third week of January. So right after I'd started, and I remember talking to Ed about it because it was right after, pretty close to the early stages of joining. And I think even by that trip, I had dropped about 12 to 15 pounds. So it was a pretty quick decrease. But going into that trip, I realized I had a different mindset where I still enjoyed myself, but I was still focused on making the best decision that was possible for me at that time. So I still had a few drinks. Certainly, I think the goal was to maintain during that trip, maybe not necessarily to lose, but coming back from that, I think, was also a different opening, because I knew that I wanted to continue to make sure I had space during my journey for trips like that, or times where maybe it's not a break, but I just needed to take a step back, but then needed to come right back to it, where, coming back after that trip, I think I remember I didn't have anything planned. I didn't have my next meal planned. I didn't have a plan for groceries to be available when I got back. So that first few days coming back, I was just back to maybe just kind of scrapping around for things until I kind of jumped right back on it. But I think I'm going off on a tangent, but I think that first month was just really just a reset, and just kind of getting me to understand that I really can do this. And I think after seeing those few pounds and this first 15 pounds drop, I think some of it was just kind of then adding in those additional things, continuing to keep track of steps, adding in the training and continuing on with that. Full disclosure, I think cardio was my least favorite. So I probably kind of took a few months to really kind of get into and bought into the idea of doing cardio the 2 times a week or 3 times a week that I was supposed to. So I didn't really fully start that till probably the 3rd month of joining RNT. But I was honest about it in my check-ins, though.
Was your husband supportive of your journey? And what was the conversation like between you two?
So I did talk a lot with him even before I kind of signed up for RNT, because we knew it would be a change in not so much the dynamic, but just change in how things had to function within the household. And I think he was definitely, he's been very supportive, and there has been a lot of things that he's had to pick up where, we now know that I'm going to carve out some time for getting my walk in to make sure I get my steps. So that's now become part of the process. But initially, if I were to know that Mondays and Wednesdays, 7 to 8 is my training time, if the kids had soccer, he had to take them. And, so it took a little bit of time. And I think it took a little bit of, honestly, me kind of asking, it's not really asking, but just me trusting and me being okay with kind of relieving some of that responsibility. And it was one of those things. It was like, I don't know why it took even this time. And he was very willing to do it. And he was very happy to kind of be supportive in that way, where he's picking up more things, and he's picking up more of the kids and making meals. And now it's kind of 50-50 where I batch cook for myself on the weekend. But he makes meals for kind of the kids and himself like most of the week. And he kind of does that separately. So
what's his health and fitness routine, habits, approach like? Was he already there, or is he on his own journey?
So I keep telling him, I'm like, you should do RMT. So I think if we can get him on RMT, that would be a pretty big coup for me. But he does his own thing. I'd say after I started my journey, he actually had joined a boxing gym. He does Jeet Kune Do, which is Bruce Lee's kind of form of martial arts. So that's something he started, I'd say, a few months after I started. So he does that 3 times a week and has been really loving it. There's definitely some great habits that he has, that I've learned to pick up. And I don't know why it's taken me this long, but he doesn't snack. Like, he's not a snacker. So, I used to kind of go into the pantry and munch on little chips here and there. He's very, kind of does his main meals, and that's about it. So it's, I've kind of had to take on some of those good habits from him, but I'd say he's also active, kind of just doing things around the house, within just gardening. But in terms of a shift from his perspective to jumping on board with what I'm doing, he's like, I can't eat what you're eating. So we kind of keep that.
Well, I think it's always an interesting question, because I think it can make or break someone's transformation without realizing. And I think having that communication and understanding of, all right, I might need to take some time away from potentially the kids so that you can help out here. And oftentimes just that conversation has never been had, and it can really hold people back. So speaking to people who are in a they've got kids, they're in a marriage, and this may be the blocker for them in having that conversation, or almost letting go of that guilt. I think you probably describe mom guilt, right? To an extent. Maybe speak to that person specifically. How can you help break through that?
Yeah, I think again, going through it, I think it was just, as I started that journey, my husband knew that he was going to have to take on more, and he did, and he has been. And our kids, like I mentioned, they are older, so they themselves have now started to pick up more things and do things on their own. But when I think back to even before this, I think back to like, why didn't I do this before? Why didn't I start something like this, or focus this much time on myself before? And I think I always felt like I needed to take whatever extra time that I had and pour that into doing things with the kids, for the kids, taking them to their activities. And they both play soccer, so spending that time on the soccer field. But that hasn't really changed now. So I'd say, what you do doesn't have to change. Your time with the kids doesn't have to change, but it's just a slightly different viewpoint on it. So I still take them to their soccer practice, but rather than sitting there in a chair for an hour and a half, just kind of watching them practice, I now get my steps in. So I go walk for an hour, get my steps in, and then maybe 30 minutes, I'm still feeling like, okay, I can watch them, kind of see them, how they're progressing. It's kind of shifted a little bit. I'm still doing some of those things with them, but it may be a little bit different on how I do it. I really do. And I know I can't necessarily wish to say, I could go back, but I don't really know why I wouldn't have been able to do this when they were 5 years younger. It may have been harder. They may be a little bit more, they may have needed me a little bit more just in terms of what they physically need, but I don't really see a reason why I couldn't have done this. I'd say, especially for those moms out there, especially the new moms, like, it is okay to take that time for yourself. And I think it's actually better in the long run, just even in that kind of the mental state, the mind frame, that you might have in being able to spend that time with your kids and give them that time, that you are worth it. And it is worth taking that time for yourself, to whether you want it's improving yourself, whether it's just getting that just relief you need just to take that hour walk and just clear your mind, that it is worth it, and you are worth it. So
you dropped over 70 pounds, right? Which is a massive milestone to accomplish. And on day one, I don't know if you were expecting to drop 70 pounds or if that was what the goal was, but how did you mentally stay in the game to drop the 70 pounds? Because it does, no matter how fast you go, even at its absolute quickest, it's still a year. Or at least close to a year. Yeah, going at a relentless pace. Yep. So how did you keep yourself in the game?
It's I was actually going back when right around my checkpoint, I went back to some of my old check-ins very early. I think we were still doing check-ins over email at that time. So I was going back to it. And that was something that when I first looked at my onboarding documents, and there's the checkpoint weight, and then I think the expected kind of that time around when I might reach checkpoint. So in January 2022, I think my expected checkpoint date was February of 2023. And for a weight that I don't think I was since I was 10 years old. So first I had to get over that weight number. But then the second point I thought was February 2023, that is 13 months away. Like, how do I even really get my arms around that? Like, it just seems so far away. And I'd have these, in my check-in, I think I even had included, and this was in January of 2021, that I feel like I'm not progressing. I don't know, how I'm ever going to get there. And I think it was Ed, or I think it may have been Ivan, who wrote back and said, look, you didn't get here overnight. You're not going to get to that point overnight either. Just focus on the process. Just don't worry about that checkpoint day. Don't worry about that final number. Just focus on your process and what you're doing every day, and just go through it. And I thought, okay, that's all well and said. I said, okay, I'll do that, but I would still have my doubts, like every few months. And I had this spreadsheet that I created that, looked at my starting point and, 1% drop. And I took it down week by week and kind of would estimate around when, and I, do all these sorts of calculations if I'm on track, not on track. But I think by month 3, I stopped obsessing over that. As long as I was hitting my 1% a week, I think I was fine. I wouldn't say that throughout the time that I was fully just single focused. I definitely still had my doubts. I would kind of have times where maybe I'd go on a trip and come back and I'd go off track and off plan. But even going off those plans and kind of working with the coaches, like, it was always a lesson learned, and I'd kind of reel myself back in. And I'd probably say midway, so like June of last year, June, July, I'd gotten to a point where I was at a weight where I think it was probably the weight I had been most of my adult life. So kind of even going back to college, I had gotten to a weight where kind of pre-wedding and college, and I still had 40 pounds or 30 pounds to go. I think that's when I kind of got a little bit of an extra push, like, wow, now I'm at a point where I was at even before my engagement, and what else can I do? And so I kind of started to, I think, up it a little bit in terms of like my cardio. I ran it by Ed at that point, and I started doing Orange Theory classes, which is like the HIIT classes. And so I'd kind of do those as my cardio, still had my training, and I'd do that. And I think that kind of gave me a little bit of the additional competitive edge to then see what more I could do. And at that point, it was a focus of performance. So, can I get faster? Can I sweat more? Can I burn more calories? And I'd say between that and December, I felt like it was a shift in my mindset from getting to, I definitely still had the checkpoint date, but it was definitely more of focusing on the 1% a week and continuing to improve performance and just kind of week by week checking off the boxes, as you say. And when I got to December, I think it was a decision point at that point. Do I continue? What do I do? I was still 10 pounds away from checkpoint, 10 to 12 pounds in December. And I knew that I wanted to go through year 2 of RNT for 2 reasons. One, I wanted to hit checkpoint, but I think the bigger thing at that point that I was thinking of is I wanted to make sure that I was able to kind of get through the next step after checkpoint, because that's where I'd failed all the other times, where I wanted to get to maintenance. I wanted to kind of have that safe way to kind of get back down the mountain, as you say, right? Get back to a point where I can now feel comfortable and I'm not rebounding, or I'm not going back to my old ways, or that I had a goal after. So I wouldn't say that I was super kind of focused the entire time. I definitely had ups and downs and times where I was like, how much longer of this do I take? But next thing I knew, May 2023, I got to checkpoint, and Ivan definitely pushed me. I wasn't sure if I was even going to get there, if I needed to push it out further, but he was like, you're ready. You need to hit checkpoint. You need to get past this. So
did you, what was the gap between the prediction and the final?
So we ended up, February 2023 was the time frame. And then I think the weight, I was 10, 12 pounds higher. So my actual checkpoint was 12 pounds higher than that original.
Okay. So not too far.
Weight. Yeah, not too far. And I know, at the beginning, I'm sure maybe I could have gotten there. I don't know. And I know it's you all talk about that original checkpoint weight changes, and it morphs as you kind of drop that weight and you kind of see your physique and how you're looking. So I think as we got closer, it was that higher weight. And I think just kind of worked out. So
yeah, I mean,
12 pounds, 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like spot on, and the initial sort of the timeline is usually dependent on, and this is why I ask around the ability to sustain that deficit, because that is the thing that will probably delay it. Like February was probably if every single week was 1%, but life will always add an extra buffer in, and then with the other one, it's usually around the 10%. You were just probably 10% higher, which is like, it's usually around that 10% higher, 5% higher, depending on how much muscle that person has. And you probably had a bit more muscle.
Yeah. And I think it was the last, I'd say 10 were definitely the hardest, just in terms of getting that. And I actually didn't really think I even knew I was in the grind till like I was in it. It was kind of like a slow point getting there, when at the end of December, I think I was on, 1,200, 1,300 calories. And I will say I actually dropped weight over the holidays. So I continued that, which I don't think I would have ever thought would be feasible, but I did. And then coming into kind of that last 8 pounds, I think were definitely took it. And I think by the time I got to checkpoint, I was around 1,000 calories, which was still higher than my crazy restrictive diets in the past. So the 1,000 kind of seemed like, oh, okay, I could do this. I was tired and felt it towards the last couple of weeks, but yeah.
Why did you book a shoot?
So it was something when I had first started with RNT and kind of reading the onboarding material, you kind of talk about the photo shoot lean, the checkpoint, kind of people doing photos. I mean, all of the photos I saw before I even joined, all the case studies. I mean, those after photos are just kind of mind blowing. Like some of the befores are great, but the afters are just kind of like, wow. So I knew when I started, it was kind of like in the back of my mind, like, that would be really going out of my comfort zone. Like I've never really done anything like that. Never really even thought that I would be out in workout clothes or a sports bra trying to take pictures. So as I got closer, I don't know, I think it was in February timeframe when I was talking to Ivan about when my checkpoint date would be. And he said, would you be willing to kind of commit to it and lock it in with a photo shoot? And I thought, you know what? Why not? Like maybe that's what's going to take to really, really lock it in. I knew if I hadn't, I may have been kind of continuing to push, and I couldn't be in this kind of fat loss phase forever. I started in January 2022. At this point, it had already been 14 months. And so it was like, I really either need to lock it in, get to whatever that checkpoint is and kind of close it out, or I need to say, I'm good where I am and need to go into maintenance. So I, at that point, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to try that, whatever I can get off in the next 2 months, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and then I'm going to do a photo shoot. I wouldn't say, I definitely achieved more than what I thought I would have when I started in January 2022. Certainly didn't get the six pack or, certain things that I just didn't have, but I was okay with it because I was still like, when I saw the pictures, like just even the first picture that the photographer took, I couldn't believe that was me. Like, I think I didn't shed a tear, but there was a tear that was right at the cusp because I just almost didn't recognize the person through the lens. Like I had kind of arm muscles. I'm like, is that really me? Is there already a filter on that? And she said, no, that's you. And I thought, holy crap, like I did this. So it was definitely, I'm glad that Ivan even asked, because I don't know if a year later, if I was still thinking that I do close this off with a photo shoot, but I'm glad I did. It felt more formal. It felt kind of like a good closure to that phase.
Amazing. What did you learn about yourself in the grind?
So that's a good question. I learned that it's not as weird or awkward as you'd think taking prepped food to a work trip. I actually had, I think, 2 or 3 weeks of travel. One was work related. One was a graduation for our nephew. Like this was 2 weeks before a photo shoot. So it was like right in the midst of it. I was like, how am I going to do this? Do I delay my shoot? Do I delay? And I was like, nope, like you got to do it. Life comes. You can't just keep rescheduling things. And during that time, I had a work trip and I don't travel a lot. So it was kind of like, I haven't been up there since October. So we knew there was going to be business dinners and potential distractions and things. And I was like, okay, I guess I need to take some food with me. So I prepped my breakfast and lunches and I felt really awkward because I thought, oh my gosh, everyone's going to be looking at me, wondering like what's going on. And, someone may have asked, but no one got a deny. Like it wasn't a big deal. I kind of did my thing. I shared at that time, I did share what I was doing with my colleagues as well. And everyone was so supportive. So that was one thing. I think sometimes it's in our heads what we perceive as how is it going to look or what someone's going to think about it. But in the end, one, doesn't matter. And two, no one's thinking anything of it. It's really, you do what you do. And then two, coming out of it, I think it was, I realized like, I think it was nice to get to that goal that I knew I couldn't veer off too much because I knew I didn't get to the exact pound, but I was within a pound of that final checkpoint, but it felt really good to continue pushing to that final date to get to my goal. And I found myself actually going to gyms in random cities that I was in because I wanted to get that extra workout. I wanted to get that extra cardio. So I was finding classes, finding gyms, going to the hotel gym, walking from my hotel to my work because I knew I'd be sitting in meetings all day. So it was almost really interesting to see how much change that I'd had without even really consciously thinking about it because I was just planning these things and it wasn't like I really had to go out of my way. It was just now part of who I am. So
did you get much slack from family and friends or people around you with what you were doing?
yeah, so yes and no. I would say I wasn't as open about what I was doing. That is one thing I wish I had been a little bit more broader about what I was doing, how I started with. I told my closest friends, but I don't think I told them till, I don't know, I was in like 5 months into the journey. I don't know, part of it was maybe I didn't want to commit just in case I failed, but I don't think I even told my closest friends that I was doing this until like I'd already lost some weight. Then with my family that we see each other often, it was tough at first because I was like, I'm not going to eat what you made. I'm going to make my own food. And it's like, well, it's home cooked. And it's like, well, yes, it's home cooked, but there is oil in there that hasn't been measured. And so I know it's going to be off. So it took my mom and my mother-in-law and, our family a little bit of time to get that. I think initially maybe it was thought of as not me being difficult, but it's kind of like, okay, it's one more thing. But it was pretty amazing because then within a few months, we'd go to dinner at my mom's and she would make my food separately. She'd kind of measure it out. And then we'd go visit my in-laws in Florida. And my mother-in-law would be like, okay, so how many grams of vegetables can you have? And how much teaspoon of oil? So she would make my food separately. And I didn't even need to ask her, which was actually like just amazing because just to know that that's made a difference and that they understood it. So I'd say from getting slack, I didn't really get it. I think towards kind of the last, 20 pounds or so that I was still looking to lose. I think it was a shift in how people were used to seeing me. I think even at my lightest weight through college, I'm still now, 30 pounds lower than what I was. So I think it was a shift in how people saw me. So that took some time. I think my family, my extended family has even mentioned, they're like, it's going to take us some time to get used to seeing you like this because they've just never seen me kind of in this frame or in this type of body before. But I'd say from just kind of slack, I don't think I really ever got the full negative pressure. There was definitely comments of, you don't need to lose anymore. Why are you losing this? But it was never enough to really get me second guessing why I'm doing this or what I'm doing. So
amazing. So you hit your checkpoint in May 23. We're recording this sort of end of July. We're probably coming up to the 3-month mark since checkpoint. How have you found consolidation, early investment, and this sort of new period of trying to maintain without that drive or prize in front of you of a checkpoint, a photo shoot, a weight loss goal?
Yeah, I'd say it's been pretty smooth. I think I've definitely identified areas that I want to continue to work on. I think now it's more of a mindset shift where, like you said, there isn't this kind of prize now, but I'm still focused on the scale. So that's been a challenge where it was tough to see some of that weight come back on. I'm about 5 pounds heavier than I was at a checkpoint, which is expected. And I think that is part of the process of coming out of checkpoint and into consolidation is an investment is to kind of get back to your consolidation/maintenance calories. I'm still at my consolidation calories, but I think in general, I'd say not much has changed for me. I'm still, I still check my weight every day. I still measure out food. I still meal prep. So that is part of what I'm working with Ivan now is kind of taking those small steps of one, not freaking out when that scale fluctuates or goes up, to kind of including some kind of a planned untracked meals to really kind of allow myself to have the confidence and trust myself that I now know enough that I can make good decisions and it doesn't have to all be 100% planned still, but I'm working my way there. I think I'm still, I may have mentioned this during one of our calls, like I'm still of the mindset that I like to have my meals prepped I know I like to know what I eat. So Sundays, I'm still trying to prep for the week. And then as we come into the weekend, if our family is doing something else, or if we're ordering in, or if we're going out to dinner, it's still a decision where, is it worth it for me, or do I want to swap out my planned and fixed meal for now doing this? And it's a true decision, and almost a swap, where before it would have been, oh yeah, I'll do it. But now it's almost, for me, it's got to be worth it, if that makes sense. But yeah, I'd say for now, I think it's been kind of continuing on what I've done over the last few months, with just a little bit more calories, about 600 more calories, which has been nice. It's amazing to see how much more food 600 is, but at the same time could be very little depending on how you plan it. But I think I'm really looking forward to kind of shifting that mindset from kind of that weight loss scale weight to now going into some more performance goals. I'd like to run a 5K without stopping some point before the end of this year. I'd like to work on a few of my performance, just kind of training lifts. I want to conquer the Bulgarian split squat, since that was probably my least favorite exercise during this entire process. But so I have a few performance things that I'd like to work on and continue. But along with that, just kind of a mindset shift, and a mindset to make sure I get to a point where I'm confident in a lifestyle solution that isn't necessarily all focused around the scale, whether that's a nutrition scale or a weighing scale.
So what does the lifestyle solution look for you in the coming 12, 24, 36 months as you sort of work to refine this?
Yeah, and I think that's I'd say it's figuring out, just even in terms of my training, making sure that I continue that, because now I see, with my mom, as she's gotten older, and just kind of, as we age, women, especially as we age, we do start having just some bone related issues. So I want to make sure that I continue to build that strength. So I think from a training perspective, like, that has become part of my lifestyle, whether that's with a trainer, with a class, or just kind of doing things at home. I actually bought dumbbells and a weight rack like during RNT that I'm able to do at home. So I think that's now become part of my lifestyle solution. I don't know if I'll ever shift away from meal planning, to be honest. Like, I think I'm actually, that's a shift from what I said at the beginning, right? When I started R&D, I was like totally kind of not fully bought into the whole idea of meal prepping and batch cooking, but I think I kind of like that. I like having that clear headspace of not worrying about what I'm going to eat, and not just knowing it's already there. So I think that's going to just be part of my lifestyle. So I actually don't really see my lifestyle solution changing a whole lot outside of what I'm doing, with the exception of getting to a point where I'm comfortable doing the untracked meals. One aspect of something that I've been talking with Ivan and trying to figure out ongoing is kind of figuring out like where alcohol kind of comes in, right? It's not to say I haven't drank this entire time, but that is, not a big part of what we do, but socially, that's just kind of available. So kind of figuring out like what that means, and how to move forward with kind of maybe bringing alcohol back in, and what does that mean? So, but in terms of kind of my day-to-day, I think I'm kind of closer to that lifestyle solution, with the exception of feeling comfortable with the scale still.
Yeah, that shift to untracked intuitive eating is a slow but step-by-step process. You have to almost like peel it back one at a time. Okay, I won't track weekends, and then, or I won't track this one meal a week. So it's an iterative process of like understanding how to view food away from tracked environments.
Yeah, and I'm not in a super rush to get there just yet. Yeah. I definitely want to do this. I'll say the right way. I think in the past, whenever I've gotten to there hasn't really been a goal. I think in the past during my weight loss stuff, it was kind of like, okay, what can you drop in 3 months? And there was never a plan after that 3 months, like what happens at that point. So then what happened is I just kind of came back to my pre-weight loss habits. So now it's identifying what those habits are. So, the one that I'm dealing with right now is I started taking a few crackers from the pantry kind of in between meals. And I included that in my cohort kind of check-in. And Ivan said, this is the definition of the death by 1,000 cuts in terms of, it's a few crackers here and there. And he's like, figure out why you're doing it. And then if you really want them, just plan them into your meal. And so, initially my hesitation was, well, those aren't in the nutrition database. And well, guess what? Those can be added. So I sent him the nutrition facts, and it's now added into my plan. But I think the bigger thing is kind of understanding, like, why did I go to reach for those crackers? And did I really need them? Probably not. So it's kind of digging into those deeper understandings of kind of the reason behind whether it's emotional eating, kind of eating out of boredom, just kind of falling back to those kind of habits that are just right there, right underneath that you've kind of broken because you've had that prize or that goal, but now that you don't, it's those are easy to shift back to.
Well, this is the hardest bit, and this is where you can feel like you've got like your training dialed in and your lifestyle dialed in, but then when these old habits, like they're like they've been suppressed for a while, and really that rewiring of your mindset, behavior, identity just takes that time. And I'm glad you brought up death by 1,000 cuts, because I was going to mention, like, the biggest battle is fighting a death by 1,000 cuts, where to get to a point where you are intuitive with that whilst keeping your lifestyle solution and in your sweet spot, it's avoiding a death by 1,000 cuts where, it's the cracker here, then it's the glass of wine,
right?
Then it's the chocolate bar. And the next thing you know, you look at your diet and it's like, oh, this is a one-way ticket back to where I was. Yeah. And it happens without you realizing it.
I don't know. Can we add wine to the nutrition database?
Yeah.
Like, plan that in. No.
I mean, and that's the thing. It can't, like, those things can be built in, but it's like, it's a trade-off, isn't it? It's a trade-off. And it's like, what do you want? Like, do you want wine to be a part of your life? Do you want alcohol to be and I think it's interesting you brought up the alcohol discussion, because understanding where that fits is a difficult one, because there aren't really any health benefits for alcohol. Like, you can say red wine is great, but unless you're drinking 5 gallons of it, you're not getting any of the resveratrol, or however you pronounce it. So there's no health benefits. It's purely like, do you want it or not? And if you do, there needs to be a caloric allocation to it. And then also an energy and bandwidth allocation, because when you're under the influence of alcohol, your decisions are usually the worst.
Yeah. And I think this process, that has definitely, there have been times I've stayed alcohol free pretty much throughout, but there were definitely times where, on a trip or on a social occasion I would, but I definitely paid attention to, exactly as you said, those decisions, right? So as soon as you have a couple of glasses of wine, it's, well, I've had a few glasses of wine now, so let me go ahead and have that dessert. And those things just happen. And so it's coming to a conscious point to understand those decisions. But yeah, I don't know yet where that's going to fit in, or how it's going to fit in, or if it's going to fit in. So that's definitely part, I think, of kind of that ongoing discussion, and something I want to be open, and I wanted to just kind of to work through and understand what that means. So that's definitely something that I included in my investment questionnaire. And
and that makes you think, that questionnaire, right? When you're going through it, you're like, oh, what do I think about that? What do I want with that? I never thought about this.
Yes. And I was surprised when I was going through that questionnaire. I think there was a question about the steps part, and I think I put 10,000 or something like 8 to 10. And again, kind of going back to, I work from home, but I have a desk job. So before starting RNT, I think when I was looking back, I think I was getting 2,000 steps a day, maybe 3 on a day that I may have been up and moving around a lot. So just that shift from that to getting 10,000 steps a day doesn't seem overwhelming anymore. So I think, like, that's a big coup. I feel like, I think that's one thing I'm like really excited about, because I enjoy my walks, and I listened to, I think the first half of the year, I think R&T podcast got me through all the Hall of Fame conversations and discussions, got me through all my walks. And so,
Amazing.
So it's cool to kind of continue that moving forward. So.
And now you're here on a Hall of Fame podcast yourself.
I know it's hard to believe that I am. I was talking to my kids about this when I first signed up for it. And, my son said something like, wow, Mom, you were inspired by all of those podcasts before, and you're like going to do this now, become an inspiree. I don't even know if that's a word, but I was like, that's kind of a cool way to look at it, because it is true. I mean, I listen to so many of those, and it's really interesting because I think everyone has a different journey. Everyone's kind of that muck is different, what they're going through, and each has their own journey, and there's no right or wrong. And I think that's one thing that's been so great through the cohorts is, I think even initially I'd feel kind of uncomfortable or almost embarrassed in a way of sharing my journey, even within a cohort. But I think I quickly realized like there's no right or wrong. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing and dealing with their own challenges. And I think once I kind of, even listening to all the Hall of Fame and realizing that, I think has kind of, it almost opened my mind through that process that I don't need to be embarrassed. This is my journey. Like I make it how I want to make it. And my goals are my goals. Like I don't need anybody else's influence. So I stopped comparing myself to others. I stopped comparing to, in terms of somebody else hitting a checkpoint and they're at this weight or they looked a certain way. So I think just hearing different perspectives during those podcasts and even reading some of the messages on the cohort just it's been amazing. And just kind of hearing everyone's journey is pretty powerful.
Amazing. So Kalyani, how has the physical been the vehicle for you?
I knew you were going to ask that. And that is a very tough question. I'd say for now, I think I'm just still getting used to being in this physical self. But I think the biggest change for me has definitely been the confidence that I've gained through this. I'll share this one little story. Around the point of my checkpoint, I was on such a high and I was so excited that I decided to sign up for a volunteer opportunity at my son's school because I was like, I was just so excited about it. And turns out I'm now the lead room parent for 10th grade at his school. So, didn't think I would have ever done that, but here I am.
Amazing.
But I think the other part is just kind of having a clearer headspace, not like I mentioned earlier, whether it's kind of those clothes that I'm wearing or what I'm eating, just having that extra bandwidth to do things outside of myself, whether it's work, the kids. So just kind of having that additional time and attention to be able to devote to other things outside of how I look, how I feel, what I need to do, because those are now just automated and they're just on autopilot at this time.
Amazing. And what almost kept you from joining and starting that journey around Christmas 2020?
Yeah, I think it was two things. I think one was definitely whether I was ready for the commitment, because I knew it was going to be, you're very upfront saying it's a year-long commitment, and a year just seemed so long, especially compared to, like I mentioned, the quick fixes that I was really focused on before. But and then the second thing was definitely there is a monetary commitment, and it's a decent commitment, right? So it's kind of like, if I'm going to put this money down, am I really going to give it the focus and attention that I need to? And I think really what it came down to, and just talking with my husband through this is an investment in your health, and there's really no value or monetary value you can put on that. And then when you really break it down, and I think about the money that I'm spending on a week-to-week basis, whether it's on buying coffees outside, or maybe it's a few drinks going to the bar in a week, like there's just no balance. Like that ROI doesn't even hit. So I think once I kind of got over that part, it was really that commitment. And I knew when I said yes, as you mentioned, are you in or out? And I said yes. I was like, this is it. Like, this is my chance. I'm going to prove it to myself. I still question myself. That's why I didn't share my journey with a lot of people initially, but I knew that that this was going to be a different
And
process.
if you have the opportunity right now to speak to someone who is currently binge listening to Hall of Fame episodes, they're at the start of their journey, they're trying to get into the right mind frame, and they've got potentially more than a year of weight loss to get to their checkpoint, what piece of advice could you give them?
Yeah. So, well, first I'd say make sure when you're taking your progress pictures, you smile in those pictures, because I look back at my early progress pictures and I just look so unhappy, which I wasn't. So that's one thing. But I'd say you've already done the hardest step already by signing up. I think once that commitment that you make and that I made when I decided to sign up, that was probably that first step. You've already taken that hard step. I think the rest of it from now is just continuing to tick the boxes, just focus on the process, because you will be a different person coming out of it. And I'd say in some cases, it's actually great because some people, they may not recognize you when they see you in a year, and you can decide if you want to tell them who you really are, or you just choose to ignore them and you kind of keep moving because it doesn't matter. But and that has happened to me where people don't recognize me. But I'd say just kind of have little intermediate goals that you're kind of focused on. So if you're focused on a number, having those interim goal weights, I think is helpful. But really, I think the greatest advice I got is just focusing on the process. And it didn't take you didn't get here overnight. So it's going to be that time, and that investment in the time is worth it. And you will be better for it.
Amazing. If it takes you 12 years to walk in the woods, it's not going to take you 12 weeks to walk back out.
Yes. Yeah. And then that's a hard lesson. And it's almost like a mantra that you have to kind of keep playing to yourself, that it's okay to take that time. And I think the biggest part of it is if you do have a lot of weight to lose, that 1% a week is so important, because you don't want like super, super saggy skin and things. So I think that it just takes your body, that 1% a week kind of allows your body to get used to it. So it's not super dramatic, and you're not doing these extreme things where all of a sudden you look 10 years older in a matter of 3 weeks because you've just shrunk kind of not naturally, I guess. So
amazing. Well, thanks so much for sharing your story, Kalyani. I really appreciate the honesty, and I know at least one person is going to feel inspired to achieve the same.
Well, I hope so. I think that's the pay it forward kind of mentality. I hope if there is one person out there who does get inspired, I think that would be awesome. So I appreciate you having me.